And so with human design and with this layered chart of having the personality side and design side, what it can really show us for the first time is where to look for these unconscious behaviors. And it can show us really what it is we're operating with. Human design reveals who you are energetically and who you came here to be. I'm Dana, human design specialist.
And I'm Haley, the human design newbie. Listen in as we explore how leaning into your authentic self is your ultimate path to success. Welcome to the Human Design Hive podcast. Let's get into it.
Hello, hello. How are you doing today? It's so good to have you here on another episode of the podcast. And I have to tell you, I'm not really sure where to start sometimes. It's like starting a conversation by yourself without Haley here. And I have been known to talk to myself quite a bit at times. I'm comfortable with that, but I never really have to like ease into the conversation like I do here. So, just some random musings from my mind. Anyways, it just struck me that I don't really pay attention a lot of times to what's happening in my neighborhood until I go to record. And as I was setting up to record today, it's late afternoon. The only other person in the house is my son, who lives in the other end of the house. He is well ensconced, deeply engrossed in building yet another model of his. He really loves these little fine, intricate models that he works on. But anyways, my neighbor across the street keeps coming and going on his motorcycle, which is really quite annoying when you're trying to record because it's quite loud. And so I would start to record and then I'd have to wait for him to leave and he'd come back again. So anyways, hopefully he's gone now for a little bit. If he's not, you might hear him rumbling in the background. I'm not sure. I try to get rid of some of those unnecessary noises. But anyways, so that's just the random thought there. But what I wanted to talk to you about today, again, I don't always plan out so much what I'm going to talk about when, which I guess, for maybe a more professional podcast, maybe you should do that. But I'm working with my own design here, which is I'm a generator, so I'm responding to things around me about what I should talk about. And I have a running list of topics to talk about. I keep them all, in a Trello board there. But then when something comes into my awareness that shows me, oh yeah, I want to talk about that today or for the next podcast, then I start ruminating and I'm an emotional generator. So then I give it a little time to think about, well, is that really what I want to talk about this week? And so I had been going back and forth between two, topics, but where I landed today is really talking about another part of the chart that causes some confusion sometimes, and that is the red and the black, the design side, the personality side, the conscious, the unconscious, because of something I was listening to on a podcast that talked about the unconscious side and not being aware of these things. And so I wanted to kind of explain it to my best knowledge a little bit better and how I see it, how it's been taught, but also how I'm learning to really allow it to kind of move more effortlessly through. I mean, it does anyhow, but I don't know. You'll understand as I keep talking. So as I said, I'm just going to share my thoughts on this. And so when you're looking at your chart or anyone's chart, you're really looking at the layers of two charts, okay? Because the black side on the right-hand side, which if you're looking at traditional charts, it's going to be in black. Maybe you're looking at some other charts. They use different numbers or colors, but if you use most of them, they'll show the black side. Of course, if you go to my website, which you can do that, you can go to, it's right there to get your free human design chart, enter in your information. It'll spit out the body graph for you, and you'll see on the right the black numbers, and on the left you'll see the red numbers. The black numbers, again, are referred to as the conscious side, or the personality side, which represents the exact time, place, and date of your birth. And this is where we also know that knowing the time of birth is pretty important in human design. Might be a good handful of you out there that has no problem finding your birth time because you're maybe born after, say, around 1970s is when they started really using it on all birth certificates. Before, it might not have been there. Like my husband doesn't have his on there, but mine does. And so the black is the representing the time that the baby was physically separated from the mother. Okay. And then the red side is the design side and the unconscious side. And this is calculated as 88 astrological degrees before the time of birth. Okay. So why do we use this calculation? Well, according to the voice, which is how the system was delivered through Ra Uru Hu, and if you don't know the background of that, you can check out, I believe it's the second episode of the podcast here on the origin story, but you can have a listen to that. Anyways, but the voice said that basically we all carry these two crystals of consciousness. They're not actual crystals, but it says this is what we can most wrap our heads around, that there's these two crystals of consciousness, one being a personality crystal and one being a design crystal, that are held together in the body by the magnetic monopole. Okay. The personality crystal lives in the head center, and the design crystal lives in the ajna center, and the monopole is in the G center. Now, the design crystal, the voice said, is called forth from the earth by the father's energy before conception. And then it's about 8 hours before conception. I guess I'm giving you the whole story here. I was not going to, but that line one in me is trying to give you all the information. Anyways, basically, within the design crystal is really the body, is the design of your body, your ancestral DNA, your epigenetics. So like, how you can inherit certain traits from your family, like actual physical traits, biological traits. We receive the genes that determine color of our eyes, hair, all that stuff. We also, in a spiritual sense, according to the voice, we inherit certain energetic DNA from our ancestors. And so this is what lives in the design side. So basically, when this design crystal is activated and the fetus begins to form, what the design crystal is doing is informing the physical form of the fetus. And so it gets to work in building the body. It gets to work on building what the human design refers to as the vehicle. So the red side of your chart is the vehicle. It is the body. It is the unconscious. It is what you will use in this lifetime in order to experience life through the personality side, the personality crystal, which is also referred to as the driver. So these calculations occur because the design crystal gets called up right before conception and then gets to work on building the fetus, and most importantly goes to work on building the neocortex in the brain. And then when that is completed, that is when the personality crystal side of you is called into the consciousness, basically. And that occurs at 88 degrees before your birth. So it then gives your consciousness, that personality side of you, roughly 3 months to adjust to the vehicle in utero while you're developing within the mother. And then once time of birth occurs, you are separated and you start the journey. So That's the basis there. So what does this mean though for you? So I just talked about the vehicle and the passenger, and then the G center is often referred to as the driver. So basically what Ra taught was that your vehicle, your design side, your body, all the markers in your chart, the unconscious, all the thing that's there is how you will experience life. That's the vehicle. It's going to drive you around. It's going to interact with the others around you. It's going to take you where you need to go. It's going to help create the experiences that you need to experience. Your personality side, the black side, is the side that gets to just sit back and observe. It just gets to experience what the body brings it around to. And how it gets there is from the driver, through allowing that magnetic monopole to bring to you, attract to you the things that are beneficial to you, that feel good to you, are the things that you want to follow in life. It just attracts. Remember, a monopole only attracts. So let's take a moment here and talk about what we mean by the conscious and unconscious here. So the conscious side of your chart, the personality side, the black numbers, these are the themes and personality traits within you that you probably most identify with. These areas are where you are most likely to say, when you first see your human design chart, yes, I get this. I understand this about me. And even if it's all new to you, it's more likely to sink in faster, those sides of your chart and the themes that bring with them, because it is the conscious side of you. Now, the design side, the red side, shows you themes and traits that you most likely, especially at first glance, don't necessarily identify with. And these are really the undercurrents that really influence your behavior and shapes your character. It's also areas where other people are probably more cognizant of that expression of your energy than you are, because they are experiencing it from you, from the outside. And so in the human design context, what they are experiencing from you really is this representation of ancestral input on a soul level of your energetic DNA. And this is what you've received really from your mother, your father, and even farther back in your family tree. And so there's been a lot of research going on, and they're starting to really embrace in science the fact that there is this imprinting on our DNA, the experiences of our parents, our grandparents, great-grandparents, has passed down some emotional, psychological, or behavioral characteristics. And in some ways, this is also could be seen as what are experienced as some of our gifts or talents or anything like that, or issues that our ancestors maybe experienced is echoed in our own DNA and our own energetic makeup. And so what's interesting and why I bring this all up is because we've a lot of time, So in the whole personal development and healing and even psychology, all these things, we're always talking about unconscious behaviors and how it's usually the unconscious side of our personalities, our brains, however you want to look at it, that's really running the show. Okay. And so when you think about that image of the iceberg, where you see the tip of the iceberg is, above the surface, and then roughly most of the iceberg is under the water, unseen. That's kind of how you can describe this experience of the conscious and unconscious and how it expresses in our behavior. And what's interesting is there's always been this quest to find the unconscious, to see where our shadows lie, to really basically just bang around in the dark with a very small flashlight in a very large room of trying to figure out where all the hidden agendas are, basically. And it's always been something that has fascinated me as well, is why do we do the things we do? Why do we think the way we think? And so with human design and with this layered chart of having the personality side and design side, what it can really show us for the first time is where to look for these unconscious behaviors. And it can show us really what it is we're operating with, what our vehicle that we're driving around in, basically, where its dents and dings are, where it also has, like I said, these talents and gifts, things that we can lean on. Because if we're going to look at the conscious and unconscious, let's also remember that these unconscious and conscious parts of us create the definition in us. These are the areas that are more consistent in us. So even if it is a unconscious, quote unquote, expression of that trait or that theme, it's still consistent. And what I have found with looking at human design and spending more time studying my own chart, my own experience, next month I'll be turning 52, and it is easier for me to recognize some of these unconscious traits of mine, so to speak. And they are areas that have kind of been underneath the surface, things I didn't necessarily understand about myself, but I knew that it was impacting people in a certain way. And so I think a lot of times when people are talking about human design or looking at their charts, it's almost like they forget that even though this is a unconscious side of you, this is still very much an active side of your design because, well, it's defined, it's there, right? It creates definition in your chart. It can help connect centers. It's all of these things. And so it's really important to not look at your unconscious side of your chart as something you can't do anything about. And I know that was taught a lot by Ra, that it's just the unconscious part of you and you have no hope over it and you can't, really control it. And that's kind of true. But I like to look at it from the perspective of, no, this is a defined part of my personality, of who I am in my soul level. How can I lean into that? Because it's being expressed whether I am aware of it or not. So how can I step into the power of those unconscious sides of me? Does that make sense? So one thing, when I look at my own chart, like I said, I'm able to identify with it more now as I've grown older, because I, quite frankly, have been spending almost 2 decades trying to get to know myself better. And if I'm being honest, it's something I've been trying to figure out my whole life. And I've always been drawn to that, to make meaning, but, it makes sense. I'm a generator, I'm here to learn about myself and my process. And so when I look at the red side of my chart, there's a lot of valuable information there. And you can even sometimes just look at your design side, although you can't, there's another thing people like to do. You can't really separate them in the sense that I've heard people say, oh, well, on my design side, I'm a projector, and on my personality side, I'm a generator. And so I always feel more like projector. It doesn't work that way, in my opinion, because it's showing us the two that are connected. Remember, that monopole is connecting all of this together. So it's an aspect, but it's not, if that makes sense. So when I look at my own design, I can see that the unconscious parts of me, the red side of me, one thing that really stands out is I'm an emotional generator. Okay. But what creates that definition for my solar plexus, the emotional solar plexus, is the channel 59.6 that comes off the sacral center and goes over to the solar plexus. So what's interesting here is that this is a really, really present theme on my design side because I have the 59 in my unconscious sun and in my unconscious south node. And then I have the 6 in my unconscious Mercury and my unconscious Pluto. Okay. So this means it's something I really have to look at. And there's a lot of mystery around this channel for me because it is in this unconscious side of me. What does that mean? Because if you look at it right away in the traditional human design, this channel is just all about sex, sexuality, mating. It's called the channel of mating, and all about those kind of bonds. And I have to be honest that just kind of always threw me off because I could see it's a big part of my design, but it doesn't necessarily resonate with me. However, I have heard from other people who have this channel that they tend to be attractive to other people, and not just sexually, but certainly there is that physical attraction, an unwanted attention a lot of times. And when you have that full channel, as I do, it does help us discern who to bond with and who not. But I would say that as I reflect back in my life, I certainly have experienced that a lot, especially when I was younger. I got a lot of unwanted attention. And I mean, I would just get randomly propositioned by strangers, and unwanted attention from, or just inappropriate comments from older people, men or whatever. And it always made me very uncomfortable. But I now realize as I'm older, yes, there is that energy. But for me, as I become more cognizantly aware of it, and it's important in my design, this is the part of me that helps me create intimacy in my relationships. And I can understand that as well too, because it's not just in sexual relationships, it's in friendships, it's in business relationships. This is a part of me, this channel that helps me connect people quicker on a deeper level, which is absolutely what I love to do. I mean, I really cannot stand superficial conversations. They're the most uncomfortable thing in the world. Like, I want to go deep with people and really talk about things that are, juicy or interesting, or I can really dissect, or I just really enjoy that. And I really love connecting with people on that level. And this has shown over time in my relationships, because I've maintained fewer and fewer relationships, because I've realized that if it's really a superficial relationship, I don't want any part of it, because it doesn't hold value to me. And another interesting thing here is this channel being fully unconscious, and how this is the only channel that creates my emotional definition. And this would also be, I think, why I personally don't see myself as an incredibly emotional person. And quite often when I'm, by myself, I don't necessarily feel that emotional, because without that channel, because that channel is unconscious, it's not something I'm always tapped into, but it does come on strongly when I am affected by things in my relationships, or it's triggered in some way. I'm very emotional. And I have an emotional wave, but it's just not a real present wave for me. It's just kind of in the background, and it's taken some time to kind of, since I've been paying attention to human design, to suss out what my wave looks like or feels like, or frequency. And I'm still learning that, because it's a little bit harder for me to discern. Another example of this unconscious side and not really recognizing it occurs for me with my channel 4323. So that's what connects the ajna to the throat in the knowing circuitry. And gate 43 is conscious, and gate 23 is unconscious. It's my unconscious Saturn, I believe. And so what this channel is all about, is taking this knowingness and these new ideas and new concepts and bringing them into language, making them simple so that people can understand it. But also, it's a projected channel, so it is best when people ask you for that information. And so how this plays out for me, since part of this channel is conscious and part is unconscious, is that I know I have all these maybe weird ideas to other people. I have a lot of knowingness. There's definitely new concepts and ideas that pop in my head all the time that make sense to me. And well, I guess human design is one of them, and all the things I've been interested in. I guess I mean, I'm even hesitant to talk about it on the podcast because this is an example of it. With this channel, it says I have the energy to be able to take these ideas and these concepts, this mutative transformational information, and bring it into language and help others understand it, to help change the way they think and the way they see things. And I honestly struggle with that and don't always believe that to be true. I always feel like I'm not quite making sense. I do know that when people do ask me for my insight or opinions or whatever you want to call it about certain things that I'm interested in, I can find language. It is harder if I try to just talk to people without them asking. And so how this plays out in the podcast is that even though right now, as I'm speaking, no one's asking me, I know that when it is being listened to, it is something that people asked for. They will respond to it. If they want to listen to it, they will. And hopefully what I have to say will land with them. And so even though I feel that this is a part of me, this gate 23, this unconscious part that I don't necessarily recognize, I don't necessarily always resonate with it, I can take comfort in knowing that, well, even though I don't feel it, other people feel it. And I can maybe speak my mind more often because I can lean on and have faith in that's how I'm designed, is to be able to speak about what I'm thinking. So that's another example. And so with all that being said, if you're looking at your own chart, depending on what age you are, it may be a little easier or a little more challenging for you to start digging around in these aspects of you. But I really encourage you to not just kind of discount that left-hand side, that red side, as something that you don't have any control over. Because as I said, these are really important aspects of you, because these are aspects of you that are more impactful almost to the people around you than what you think is impactful, which is your personality side. All of it is consistent in you, whether you're aware of it or not. And so I would also say that it's a really interesting place to look for possibly some of these shadow areas of your design, because as I said, you may not be as aware of these themes operating, and they all have a spectrum of experience. They have a lower shadowy, darker side, shadow side, and then they have the lighter, more pure expression of these themes. And so if you are, wondering about some of your quote unquote sabotaging behaviors, this is a good place to look as well, because each placement there will be able to show you consistently where you are moving back and forth between shadow sides and more lighter expressions of that theme. So that being said, I hope that's a little more insight into what the two sides represent. I know I spent a lot of time on the design side because I think that's where most of the misunderstanding is. The personality side, like I said, those are the areas you more identify with, and it may feel more comfortable for you to look there and to express that side. But I want to tell you that you can also try digging into the other side and really embracing the gifts that come with that design side of you, because it is the side that is really it's the drivers driving you around. And learn to embrace it, and don't try to tell the driver where to go. That is the monopole's job, which is to you're just here, personality side, sit back, relax, enjoy the ride, allow the vehicle to do its job and the monopole to bring it to you. And things start running pretty smoothly for you. And how do you do that? You should know by now. Best way to do that is, according to your type, follow your strategy. So anyways, that's my little rant for today. I hope it helps you in some way have a better understanding of these two sides of the chart. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. You can email me at dana@humandesignhive.com. You can also find me on Instagram, Dana_human-design-hive. And just ask me a question. I'm always here, available. And if you would also like some help possibly in understanding these sides of your design, you can certainly check out on my website, offer different readings for you where we would go through these parts where you might have questions and see where you are right now, what can best benefit you as far as leaning into those aspects of your design, or just, get to know yourself a little bit better, because you're pretty awesome. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to stop rambling. I get to a point where I just don't know when to shut up, so I'm going to do that now. So I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Look forward to you coming back again for the next episode. And until then, take care of yourself. Bye for now. You made it all the way to the end of today's episode, so you must have liked what you heard. If you did, make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode, and perhaps leave us a good review. And if you know someone who wants to dig into all things human design with us, make sure you share the Human Design Hive podcast with them. We'd really appreciate it. Thanks for listening.